Even the African ratio is 15% tax to GDP. And it's understandable because the founding fathers of this country based economies pre-independence on taxation, even taxing cattle. They called it jangale in the north. And people were paying. They could plan the economies. And that was when they did major things in all regions. But all of that changed, Mr. President. The moment oil was discovered in the creeks of the Niger Delta, 1957-58, Nigeria found free money in the creeks of the Niger Delta, and we left taxation, just as we left agriculture and manufacturing. So that's where we are. So the attempt by the current administration to let the governments of Nigeria, all levels, they run on tax and tax revenue is something that I fully support. I am aware that some issues have been raised, and that is legitimate. We're a country of diverse people, diverse cultures, diverse expectations, and that's the beauty and the greatness of Nigeria. We cannot expect to be a country that speaks with one voice or sees things only from one perspective. All those are legitimate observations and fears and expectations. All we're expected to do is to harness all of this and enact laws in the national interest, which I believe, following our rules, after the second reading, at the committee stage, when the public hearing is held, everybody who has anything to say will be invited to say, as the chairman of the committee has said. Now, there are issues I am concerned with. Some of these issues that have been raised are also as a result of insufficient consensus building and consultation prior to the introduction. And it's understandable, as a former governor, why some governors express concern at the neck. That is legitimate. That consultation should have taken place. And I believe between now and at the end of our legislative activities, more consultations will happen. But that does not detract from the essence of the legislations that have been sent to us. For example, there is emphasis on derivation according to taxation. And the attempt now is to encourage states to be productive. And why not? A situation where states will abandon their core responsibility to create an enabling environment, attract investment, promote economic activities, so that that state can boost its revenues. That's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. I am concerned from where I come from the experiences you and I have, where oil workers are flown into oil platforms in Akwa Ibom, in Eket and Ibono, in Akwa Ibom, or flown into Bonny and other areas in River State, or flown into Brass in Bayelsa, and in southern Niger area, and in Delta State in Ogola and Foropa, Ogola and Fokadus. We're interested that this is an opportunity for the payee taxes from those oil workers to be calculated and paid to the oil-producing states where those activities are generated, as against being calculated and paid to where the head office is located, as has been the case, where the tax is registered. And from the general principles underlying this bill, as I explained yesterday, there is a move and a commitment by the executive to address that issue of revenue derivation, to ensure that paying taxes, even for the oil workers that are flown in and flown out every day at the end of work or 2 days, be calculated and paid. If that is done, I think that is a good move that should be supported. The other area in VAT, according to derivation, when we get to the committee stage, we'll look at the specific details. But there's nothing wrong in saying that the telephone calls that are made in Bayelsa or Akwa Ibom or Sokoto or Kano, the VAT on those things that are consumed be calculated and paid to those states. And we are told that that is the essence of these bills. And there's nothing wrong about it. Because VAT is a consumption tax. It's not a production tax. Those who are in the states who consume services, the VAT accruing to those should be calculated and paid. So I'm sure when we look at the details, we'll see whether there's enough mechanism to guarantee transparency and accuracy in terms of administration. Those are some of the things we'll fine-tune. So, Mr. President, this is a good move, and there is an effort also to reduce the burden of taxation on Nigerians. Corporate taxes by the proposal. You read the bills. There's a proposal to reduce corporate taxes from next year, reducing it from the 30% that it is currently to 25%.
Now, see, I am not going to use their fancy words. Somebody said, why is Ndume angry about this tax reform? Like some other people are in support of it. So I'm not going to use all these their terminologies and I'm just going to use a layman explanation here. And I hope it will explain it better. I mean, you understand it, okay? In Nigeria, the system is about robbing Peter to pay Paul. But it works in a way that the northern Nigeria, right, which has grown lazy over the years, right? It works in a way that it works in their own interest more. While the southern part of Nigeria, which to some extent too was a little bit favored, a little bit. And what does that mean? It's in two ways. The resources that is sustaining Nigeria is from the southern part of Nigeria, like the oil, the gas, all right? However, the northern Nigeria, which is considered the biggest, when it comes to when all money is taken, it's taken in, right? Like the import tariff, crude oil sales, gas, then taxes, which mostly is from the southern part of Nigeria as well. So this whole money will be put together in a jar, like the federal government will collect this money. States also collect their own money too, okay, by law. But the chunk of the taxes is collected by the federal government. So now once they put all this money in a jar, they will begin to share the money according to population. But there are other things that they have added over time, like if we are taking this also amount of money from your side, for example, the crude oil and gas. So we will give the oil producing states 13% of the oil that we take from your states. So River State is the state with the highest contribution to this crude oil or review. Next to it is Bayelsa. Sorry, no, I think next is Delta. Then after Delta, Bayelsa. After Bayelsa, then you go to Akwa Ibom, you go to Imo and all these others, right? But from the money they are taking in, okay, Tinubu's reform is now kind of like a little bit different from what it used to be, where they share money based on population. Okay, so if not for the fact that they have what's called 13% derivation, formula, some of these oil-producing states, they don't have population like some of these northern states. Okay, so they would have been given almost peanuts, almost nothing. But when they fought for it, they were able to get some chunk from that percentage of their contribution. So similarly, there's something called the VAT, which is consumption tax. It is collected. It is meant to be collected by the states, but they fought it and it became a federal thing. That the federal government is the one that imposes VAT on everything you buy or use. So, consumption tax, all right? But there are other taxes. I'm coming to the consumption now. You see, the oil-producing states, the oil companies operating in those places, they do not have their head offices and all that in those places. They are in Lagos. So they don't pay taxes to those states. They pay their corporate taxes to Lagos. So imagine Shell. I'm just using this, imagine a Shell company that is making, or that is pumping, let's say, 20 million barrels of crude oil a year in Niger Delta. And they are declaring profits of, for example, $2 billion profit in 2023. And they have to pay the tax on that money, not to River State, not to Bayelsa, not to Delta State, but they pay it to Lagos, where they are not drilling any single drop of oil. But they pay it to Lagos, corporate tax. MTN, for example, which has over 60 million or 70 million. I'm just using some numbers to make you understand now. So MTN have, let's say, 70 million subscribers. But in Lagos, they only have maybe 10 million. Or let's say they have 100 million subscribers. But in Lagos, they only have 10 million. For all the MTN users all over Nigeria, whenever they load their card, right? So the VAT on that card, for example, you load 1,000 naira, right? The VAT is 7.5%. So 75 naira from every 1,000 naira you load goes to the federal government. But when MTN want to declare their own profits, they pay their corporate tax to Lagos. They don't pay, the VAT they removed there, right? Goes to, it's sort of accounted as being from Lagos. So if they have, for example, let's say they have 1 trillion naira, and then the VAT from that is 70 billion naira. So that 70 billion naira is not recorded, is not distributed according to all of you who uses the MTN all over Nigeria. It is accounted for Lagos, where they always file in their tax return. So that makes Lagos so rich, even though most of the money is not made from Lagos. You get that now? So what this tax reform is now doing is that this money should now be distributed, okay? Should be distributed to the states according to their usage, not to Lagos. That the same way the MTN headquarters is in Lagos, right? It should have all their offices in all the states in Nigeria file their tax return based on what they are making in those states, not put everything in Lagos. The oil companies should not file their tax return or their corporate tax in Lagos. They should file their taxes where they are making the money from, the Niger Delta. So if that then happens, right, it simply means those states will have all their money from taxes to them, while the states like Northern Nigeria will have to be creative, okay? Because it will no longer be sharing of money based on the population as collected by the federal government, and they will be sharing money to everybody. You know, where, for example, Zamfara is contributing 100 million a year, where it's collecting 5 billion naira or collecting 10 billion naira a year, even though now only 100 million they contributed. Kano cannot be contributing, for example, right, contributing 5 billion a year, but Kano is collecting like 40 billion a year. Here you get now. So what Tinubu is now saying he's doing is that, you see all this money, we will collect it now, and we will now redistribute them. We will give 60% to every state based on whatever we collect from your state, and the federal government will take 40% of that money. So this is now where Ndume comes in. So to somebody like Ndume, this is not the time to do this. Not now that the northern Nigeria has been ravaged by terrorism. So they don't have any means, any source of anything. Even if they decided that, even as they are saying that, but we will give you your VAT based on the number of population of people using internet, using the phone in your state. They say, no, it won't still be enough. Because if you do that, okay, it will still favor the southern Nigeria more than the north. Because the business activities, the economy of northern Nigeria has been destroyed beyond anything. So if you want to do it, first thing first, they must make sure that the economy of northern Nigeria is fully back. Because the north cannot succeed or survive if the north has to live within their means. Does that make any sense yet? So that is why you will see some from the north. Their own argument is that it makes sense. You know, it makes sense now. Let us just kind of like brace up. Let's live up to, here you get. Look at all these things. So it means that if we have any business in operating in northern Nigeria, we just make sure that they pay their taxes to the north, not pay it to Abuja or pay it to Lagos government. So that is, here is one of them in his own argument. Excuse me, in his own arguments is Muguno from northern Nigeria.
The Twin Senator Mongodo.
Distinguished President of the Senate, good senators, with all due respect to distinguished Senator Alin Dume, who was my minority leader in the House of Reps, a leader in the Senate, and immediate first whip of the Senate with all the cognate experience of lawmaking. I beg to disagree with him that this bill should be withdrawn first and consultation should be held with the Nigerian Governors Forum and traditional rulers. We have a procedure which is clearly and unambiguously stated in our rule book for the process of lawmaking. And the Constitution, in a very clear and unambiguous terms, gave us the powers to regulate our proceedings. Section 60. And pursuant to Section 60 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, we gave these rules to ourselves in order to guide our proceedings. And then the process of lawmaking is very clear and unambiguous as per this book, that second reading, it will be now transmitted to the Committee for Public Hearing. In the course of the public hearing, Nigerians of all walks of life, of all groups, will come and aggregate, including the governors and traditional rulers, are free
And
to
governors,
come
and
and
governors,
ventilate their opinion.
and governors forum.
Yes, that's why, including the governors forum and traditional rulers, are free to come and ventilate their opinion as to the pros and the cons of the bill before the public hearing, so that our committee will now look at the various submissions, aggregate it, and then bring it for clause by clause consideration. So this procedure that Senator Ndume, with all this due respect, has suggested is foreign to process of legislative exercise, and therefore is purely academic and should not be considered.
But not rhetoric.
Not rhetoric. It's an academic exercise, not worthy of legislative consideration.
Okay.
It's an academic exercise not worthy of legislative consideration. So, Mr. President, having said that, my contribution on the general principles of the bill is that this bill, as it is proposed, I am particularly on the issue of reducing the tax burden on Nigerians, removing VAT on food, medicals, education, pharmaceuticals, and electricity were exempted from VAT. So this bill is novel, it's pro-people, because it's trying to reduce the tax burden on Nigerians, so that it is the big earners that are going to be taxed for the purpose of. Then with regard to the issue of pay, people that are not earning more than the minimum wage are also exempted from pay as you earn tax. This will also go a long way in reducing the tax burden on Nigerians. And then with regard to the issue of company income tax that was reduced from 30 to 25%, it's equally good, because that will give an opportunity for the companies to employ more Nigerians and what have you. So on that general principle, Mr. President, distinguished senators, I support that this bill should go for second reading.
So they just put some little jara in, like if you are not earning 800,000 naira a year, they won't tax you. So you get, let's say you are just earning 50,000 naira, they will not tax you. But if you are earning 70,000 naira minimum wage, which simply means that you are likely going to be earning like maybe 75, 80,000, something like that. So in a year, that is more than 800,000 naira. So they will tax you and take, I think 30% or 25% of that from you. Company tax is also that if there is if your company is not making up to, I think it's 5 million naira a year, they won't tax you. These are just some little jara that makes it look like, oh, this is not bad. But it's like going to be like escape from this and you get caught in the other. When this, what do you call them? When these businesses are caught in the tax net, the tax, what have you, right? They will kind of push it on you, the consumers. So the rant of Ndume today is different from his rant yesterday. So this was his rant earlier today on top the matter.
Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, I'm Senator Ndume, representing Borno South. Mr. President, as you said and as we discussed, reforms is necessary if we have to move forward. Even in our lives, You look at where you are, where you want to be, and how you want to be, so that you get there. I am not against reforms. And I'm not against these reforms, tax reform. My problem is number one, the timing. The timing as it is today, when you talk about reforms to Nigerians, whether it's good or bad, they misconceive it. And as we said, I just want to add to what distinguished Senator Sekibo, Tareke Dipo said, Senator Dixon said,